recording, it's live. Yes. Yes.
Give us 2 more minutes and we can start.
Here it comes.
Here you go.
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
No,
Good evening, everybody.
How are you?
Beautiful night.
Oh,
Even though it's hot, it's beautiful.
it could be worse. It could be 12 degrees outside.
Oh,
It's now.
for me, it sounds funny. When it gets this warm, I have an easier time doing rehab and stuff like this. Everything seems to flow better. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not much for Florida, but this kind of weather I can deal with.
I'm working on a roof Friday in Maryland.
Ooh.
It's not
Hopefully it's a flat roof.
It's a flat roof there and leases.
It's a black, flat roof?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my, you're gonna get barbecue.
We got one of those up at the cemetery.
You know, that's 10 pounds lighter you come back.
Yeah, 10 pounds.
I can. Okay, what's the next one? Okay, you ready? The meeting will please come to order. Adequate notice of this meeting as required by the Open Public Meeting Act has been that on January 19, 2022, a copy of the notice specifying the date, time, and location is posted on a bulletin board outside of Borough Hall, mailed to the Courier News, given to the clerk administrator, and placed on the Borough website. If any member believes that this meeting is being held in violation of the Open Public Meeting Act, please state your views at this time. Hearing none, roll call please.
Art Adair.
Here.
Dan Rajevitz.
Here.
Roberta Carpenter. Here. Brian Badinsky.
Here.
Rich O'Neill.
Here.
Eric Alvarez.
Here.
Okay. Morgan McLaughlin. Ed Allett. And John Flores will not be present this evening.
Will someone please move that their absences be reported as excused?
So moved.
Move second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next item.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We have 2 resolutions. First resolution, Immaculata. Someone like to move the resolution?
I'll second it. But I've got-
Discussion?
Yeah, I've got one question. Number 3, the properties improved with the church and the Immaculata High School, there's no church there. I don't know whether it makes any difference on the resolution.
It's a rectory, but not a church, right?
No, church is up the street.
Right.
There's a little chapel.
It's a rectory, right?
Chapel in the high school.
Yeah, just make sure we're okay.
We can, it is, okay, we can, so
We can just tweak that.
we can make it.
I don't know that you can
Change it to a rectory from a church to a rectory, right? The rectory is there, correct?
Yeah.
Right next to the, right.
Okay, we'll change it from church to rectory.
Church.
Now, move.
No,
I always thought it was a church myself.
I thought the rectory was next to the high school.
I had a lot of friends who
No.
went to
The
Immaculata.
nuns provide the high school.
Wasn't that the rectory?
The nuns are gone.
Great school.
Oh.
They're still operating out of the little house on Immaculate. By where?
Yeah, I don't even know it's relevant, I just saw that there's no church.
Scratch paper to get
Used to
all
be a
out.
church.
Used to be a church.
Used to be a church.
Oh,
Yeah,
you
but
said
it's
Immaculata High School?
Just say the high school.
All right,
There seems to be some confusion about what exactly is going on.
Suggest that we just make it the Immaculata High School.
Yes.
Things change. I mean, I had a lot of friends who went there. I remember it as being, I went to mass up there a few times.
Yeah, it must be a long time until we moved
Yeah,
there.
I used to be a-
Yeah,
I started
but
with-
we'll call it, call it Immaculata High School.
I
No
just thought it
problem.
was relevant, I
Approved
just.
with Immaculate.
Yeah, exactly, but I'll send you a quick
Okay.
page.
Okay.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded in discussion. Roll call please.
Art Adair.
Yes.
Dan Rajevitz.
Yes.
Roberta Carpenter.
Yes.
Brian Badinsky.
Yes.
Rich O'Neill.
Yes.
Carried.
Eric Alvarez.
Yes.
Okay, carried. Next item, resolution for Robert Wood Johnson.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just this update to the board, hopefully get the board's blessing on this. At the last meeting, we were gonna do a flow study, the public was here, about to make sure the capacity, because there's people's backups, take a good look get that. Well, the authority, SRVSA, said because there's only 4 beds, they're going to take the 2 beds, 2 bedrooms to 1 bedroom. So in reality, it's a 4-bedroom addition. But the additional flow is 700 gallons per day, which is under 2,000 gallons, is what the borough has been using. Therefore, the flow is so less that it doesn't seem appropriate right now to do the flow study. When the shell comes in, there's a shell that most likely is going to be some beds, but we don't know that. But if that shell comes in, the fit out, it increases the flow more than 2,000. That's the time we'll do the flow study to make sure there's adequate capacity. So I was hoping the board was comfortable not doing the flow study at this time.
I think it makes sense because you just have to do it again.
Yeah. And then secondly, most 90% of the improvements, site improvements on the site, on site, there's some improvements to the sidewalk that has to be done on Rehill, which is technically in the right of way. I bring this up because the change in the municipal land use law about 5 years ago, on-site site improvements you don't have to bond for. It's the public improvements you have to bond for. But the public improvements is only like 10%. So I was wishing that the board would allow a waiver for posting that performance bond for the public improvements because 95% is not being bonded. So
It's just more administrative work for the borough to do the bonding process.
look, they're trying to get this to a construction permit as fast as possible. So we just identified today that this is but on the ADA. The ADA out there, the ramps and the landings, a lot of it just doesn't comply because I don't think it's been looked at for 40 years or 30 years. So we're just coming up with it. So if the board's acceptable not to bond for Rehill for the ADA improvements that have to be done. And if the board wants to bond it, we'll certainly bond it. It's a public improvement, but it's up to the board on what your pleasure is.
I think it's the limit of this. Why put everybody through the process? You relax so often, you know you're going to get it done.
I understand. I'm just asking. I'm just bringing to the board that whether the board would consider not bonding for the improvements on Rehill, which is going to be the curbs and some of the ramps, which is all concrete work and truncated domes. If the board's comfortable with that.
Where's the bid?
No problem with it.
Other than that, the fire marshal, I don't know where he stands. At one point, it was going to take a number of years to get some communication equipment. This is some dead spots. So there might be some bonding required from him. I'm not 100%, he was out today. I'm just letting the board know that there is a rather long lead time from the hospital to do this. There's some dead spots apparently where the first responders go in that they can't communicate with anyone. It's just dead. So the hospital has agreed to make these improvements, but over, I don't know if it's 3 or 4 years, long time from now. So he might be looking for some insurances from the hospital to get that work done. That's about all I know. I don't know where, I was trying to get hold of him today to see what the current status is, but I'm just letting the board know. Just we're talking about the height on the hospital where we are, that there's an outstanding item there that isn't. That's all, just an information.
Do you need to amend the resolution or?
No, I think I read the resolution and it says that basically what all resolution says that the applicant, Robert Wood, has to address fire marshal's comments as far as a condition of approval. So it's there, but I'm just letting the board say, no, typically we don't get assurances from the fire marshal. Typically anybody says, we'll do, and it gets done 6 months, a year. In this case, there's a very long lead time on something that's been, I'm being told, has been a problem for over 3 decades or 2. Yeah.
Like the technology that exists, it's gotten better, but it's still ain't
The size of my tax bill is not.
changes. It's a work in process.
So I'm just bringing the board up to speed on what's going on.
So we don't need to amend the resolution.
I don't think,
Based on what you're
the
saying.
flow meter is in my report and I'm comfortable with it. There was discussion with the public about we're doing this flow meter study and we're gonna get to the bottom of this. And it doesn't appear we're doing that study based on the flow, the increase in gallons for maybe a year or two to go. So I just want to make sure the board is comfortable with that, because I just want to get it out there. I don't know if we have to amend the resolution or just put it on the record.
Well,
Or,
we're putting on the record now, and of course, the other thing is that, you know, at the end of the day, it's gotta be done to your satisfaction,
yeah. And then,
which I have a greater comfort level with in the fact that, you know, you're gonna be, you know the circumstances, and you can make that, you can pass on that. It isn't somebody else, and you haven't delegated that review responsibility to anybody, nor I believe could you. So, at this point, so, I think you're all right.
yeah.
I just have three things. One, I've talked to the mayor and council president about the council trying to interfere in what's going on in this board. We had a situation with Immaculata where they were trying to put pressure on Mike to get that on the agenda. The problem was they hadn't done their work. They hadn't done it properly, and they was getting phone calls from this council person talking about it. So I spoke with the mayor and Randy and said, look, you guys got to stay out of our business. This is the second time in the last 3 years that you've come at us, or you've tried to talk about our business. And I said, you're going to hurt one of the clients. I said, if we were to turn something down and you guys discuss it, and especially in an open meeting, that client can not go to the council for an appeal. It's going to cost them more money to go to the Superior Court for the appeal. Dennis was, I know, he said, I got the phone call, I told him it's not our purview, you have to go before the zoning board.
So who made the phone call?
There were a couple people on council who were calling Mike and calling. This time they didn't call me, but I had gotten calls in the past. So you can't do that.
And the reason for the call was
You want
try
to get it on the agenda.
get it on the agenda.
I didn't get any calls, Mr. Chairman. Sorry I was left out.
Well, we had one about 3-4 years ago where several of us were approached by a client.
It happens that Tony gets phone calls, I get phone calls. We've even got phone calls from, it used to be the freeholders and the commissioners on one, it was a planning board application, but it was unusual. But it comes up
Oh, yeah, that's,
from time to time.
yeah, it's
On the agenda.
not such a great thing to do, as you pointed out, Mr. Chairman. It is to some extent
Interference.
kind of meddling, yeah.
Yeah, a couple of years ago when we turned one down, one of the council people said the entire board should be replaced. And that certain members of the board, of these boards, have been on these boards too damn long.
Talk about you.
Oh, my name and Bernie's name were brought up. Well, the reason we do this, nobody else wants to. Bernie's been on the planning board for 37 years. And I'm in my 40th year on this board and 48 with other boards. And,
So get out.
Yeah.
and as long as I'm having fun, I'm gonna stay.
And just so the board knows, when that application deems complete, Tony reaches out to the auditor chairperson and sets the agenda, and typically the policy is the first deemed complete, it's the first heard, unless there's something very compelling precedent that needs to be bumped. But generally speaking, and Tony, if this is correct, I mean, typically it's Tony and the chairman that sets the schedule, but it's generally, as soon as it's deemed complete, the clock starts, and that's when the things, that's how the board does it. It's not typically, it's right in the order when it's deemed complete.
So if you had two other things.
Yeah, two other things. We have become, or have been, over the last several years, the apartment capital of Central Jersey. And one of the things that's happening, and I see it in my neighborhood with Soma and Glory Gardens, and they're doing it here, is now the landlords are charging the tenants to park in the parking lots. And so what's happening over on South Bridge Street, 2nd Street, 3rd, Southside Avenue, they're not parking there, they're parking where the residents or have been parking. So now the residents can't park in front of their homes. So, I know my wife brought it to Bernie's attention. She didn't know that Jack Morris was charging $175 per car per month. And if you don't park there, and you just park in the parking lot, it's $75 a month. You go to the new ones on the apartments next to the railroad track. If you get a 450 square foot studio apartment, by the time they add in your parking, your trash, Wi-Fi, pets, you're over $2,200 a month for 450 square feet. It's
Yeah.
right on their webpage.
Yeah, the Cobalt charges,
Cobalt
today
charges.
most of the big apartment buildings do charge. And it becomes a question of, are you providing parking or is it additional variance if no one's parking in the parking and they're using the residential areas?
Yeah, they're parking on Cobalt, they're parking on Vets, Hamilton, and the other parking deck.
Because technically they're providing parking, but the fees are chasing, apparently,
Yeah.
the rumor is chasing people out just to save the fees for parking their money.
I
We had a
told-
similar problem, Mark, about 12 or 15 years
Yeah,
ago
with the kids from my daughter.
on Prospect and Dowdy and Summit and all those streets around there. And when Immaculata was flying high with a much higher enrollment, kids were parking all the way up to Cliff Street on my street. And at the end of the day, at 3 o'clock, it was devil may care, man. Things were flying out of windows. So what we did as a neighborhood, you weren't there yet, but we came and approached the board and they allowed resident-only parking.
That's what we're doing. We're circulating a petition for the next council meeting.
Yeah.
And the third one is, a couple of months ago, somebody on this board made a comment. As busy as we are, we cannot have a zoning officer who's on a learner's permit. So I'm going to ask the mayor again to make him the interim zoning officer until our officer gets up to speed. We've had a couple of situations like last month where he gave the permit for Bell Labs or Bell Avenue because they said it was going to be the same as what left. And then when we turned down that two-family conversion on Somerset Street across from Diane's, they sold it and told the new buyers that it was approved as a two-family. So our zoning officer gave them the permits to go ahead and do what they needed to do. So we have to have somebody who knows what the hell they're doing. We're too damn busy in this town.
How do we go about addressing this issue, because we don't hire anybody?
I know, but see, when we hired Frank Buoso back in 2000, Bernie and I, along with Gene Moore and other people, were involved in the interview process.
Well, that's because we have the right evidence.
Yeah, well, we're gonna have to start taking that away.
Can we, legally, what can we do? Cliff, do you know?
No, we're gonna get burned because they're gonna give a variance to somebody,
Yeah.
and then somebody else gonna come and say, well, you gave it to him, you gotta give it to me.
Well, if you've got a zoning official, I have a situation like this right now in Hudson County. Not that it's of course it's a different world up there, and yet there are my experience when I run into zoning officials who act too hastily on their own, either out of inexperience or just good faith mistakes. The answer is sometimes the best way to show that they need to make a change is to if I find the board is having an increased workload because of mistakes, the zoning officer is making. I'll explain that to the municipality and say, look, you're going to be paying more for me because I'm going to have to defend more and more what he and she is or not doing. That's one good way to do it. You could always take this.
And what legal stance can we take? What power do we have as a board?
Well, the board really doesn't have the power to remove the zoning official, no, but the board can certainly indicate to the administration or to the mayor directly, or both, that, you know, express your concerns about, you know, you have to state specificity of the examples, the instances of what occurred and what was the outgrowth of what happened. If, you know, a board, let's face it, a zoning official who grants variances usurps your authority also subjects the municipality to significant legal fees, because ultimately that's going to hit a problem. And quite candidly, it's a question of competence. I mean, I think, you know, what you could do conceivably is, if you do enough of that, eventually you'll get the attention of the administrator and hopefully the mayor. I mean, beyond that, the only thing you could really do would be to file formal charges against the zoning official, having had it, well, in my position with the NJAPC, I've been retained to defend such actions. It's a hard thing for a municipality to win. It's a hard thing for a municipality to win, and then what I like to call is almost like a de-designation action to strip the official of their authority due to incompetence or whatever. So I don't think that specific proceeding would work. I do think, you know, making sure the administrator knows, and that this is a problem. Because if you, every time, let's face it, every time a zoning official makes a mistake like that, what the official's done is voidable. And it's not voidable, it's not a 45-day, it's voidable all the way down the line. Because it's a variance or an approval that never should have been granted. It's beyond, it's ultra virus, beyond the stated authority, the legal authority of the zoning official to act. And what happens is you get somebody, you know, a clever, we've seen a few recently, a clever, you know, objector's attorney could come in and say, how could that official make that determination? You know, this is her authority, this is his authority. She did that. She can't make a variance determination. She can't issue a certificate she can't issue a zoning approval on her own. It's arbitrary and capricious. And a court would pretty much, in my opinion, invalidate any such action. And I don't know that there's a statute of limitations on it. I mean, the longer it goes, it becomes more of a question of possibly grandfathering, but if it's within, I'd say within a year or something. I just got finished overturning something, having to overturn something on behalf of intergovernmental conflict, where an action taken by a zoning official had to be invalidated by special counsel to the town, happened to be me. Some time had gone by, but the courts were certainly unwilling to say that that the municipality would be what's called stopped. Once it's void, it's void. And so, yeah, I would say the answer is you would have to notify. You would have to notify the administrator that what the official is doing is outside the scope of his authority.
Outside the scope of his ability and lacking a license. The thing of it is, Cliff, anyone else, if you go to the administrator, he's the guy who's solely hired him. And that's not going to go anywhere. I suggest if the board is in complete harmony, we go to someone else like the mayor or the council if that's the case.
The guy wants to get up to speed.
Well,
it's going to take time.
I want to be a doctor.
It's not that. It's not. Wait a minute. Okay. Oh, I understand, Dan. Your point. But remember that it's not just some internal. The scope of the zoning official's authority is laid out in section 70 and section 69. If that officer undertakes an authority that's exclusive to this board, he is de facto in violation of law and, frankly, in dereliction of duty, and his actions are null and void. So it's not a situation where some bureaucrat would be making a decision saying, well, I don't think it was a good idea. A judge is going to say, no, you can't do that. So it's a little more straightforward, I think, than maybe you're thinking.
But is there anything in the law in New Jersey that says that a zoning officer has to have a license? Or be accredited? Is there an accreditation procedure that's done? I mean, he was hired, he doesn't have.
As far as the accreditation procedure is concerned, you can hire an acting zoning official without having them become certified. I would think eventually they must become certified. How long has this official been going on without anything? I mean, they taking any classes or anything?
I think he's taking one with Frank Rosa.
Such a course.
It's been 3 or 4 years, right?
No, he's not tenured yet. So I think it's 3 years he's tenured, that's how I went.
I don't know what it is for some.
Yeah, but that's not what he
The
was.
CO is tenured, I don't know if the zoning officer's tenured, I don't know.
Well, that's the point, the CO's tenured.
CO I know is tenured.
Yeah.
Can be
But that
tenured.
takes 3, I think. Yeah, once they're there, you need dynamite to get them out. Yeah. I think it's a political issue, not ours. Right?
Well, you could also, I don't want to sound, Dennis may have mentioned this to you in the past. You can always commence the process of charging the officer for incompetence, dereliction of duty, issues as that, with the understanding that there'll be some sanction, there'll be some organizational discipline. Again, the issue though becomes, I learned this, Dennis and I both learned this from Michael Ponte. The problem with that is that what many municipalities do, I presume that this is a civil service town.
No, it's not.
It's not, okay, well then in that case, we probably have a system of progressive discipline where the official may have to do 2 or 3 really egregious things.
I think I see where you're going and I understand it, and I'm not trying to say that you're giving us bad advice, because you're giving us good advice, but I don't think we can accomplish that. This is a political situation that has to be solved politically. We can't hire, we can't fire. We have administrators that are tenure. The politicians have to understand we're thinking, maybe we gotta tell them.
Probably the best thing to do, in order to send a letter that it's in writing,
Yes.
send it to the mayor and council, it's part of the record, and they have to ignore it or act on it.
Right, exactly.
It puts it out on the table.
I could help you with such a letter.
So members of the board would sign it then?
Sure.
I wouldn't.
Okay.
Yeah, I would too.
Basically,
You're gonna
what you're
propose a
saying
letter?
is you're gonna write a letter saying lack of confidence.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
he has, like Rich said, he has a learner's permit.
I just can't believe that's even allowed.
It wouldn't have been.
I mean, this is pretty serious stuff.
It really is, yeah, it really is.
Because if he makes a mistake, then we have to deal with it.
Well, yeah, it falls back on the board.
Well, it falls back on the borough.
Yeah.
It's in a
It'd be a
slate,
major
it
mistake.
falls back on the borough.
It could be a major mistake.
It doesn't just come here, it's other issues. It's a functionality issue of that position, which is it's a very, very important position.
I can't believe that.
Yeah.
Licenses and everything.
I'm not sure about that, the construction one, I know you need it, but regardless.
Yeah, he's got the construction license.
But
He has that.
there's a whole lot more going on that we're not talking about, we all know. And it's an issue that the mayor and council have to.
When I was writing personnel policies, we always would make a hiring, when we were doing some future hiring, qualified or qualifiable. Yep. Get somebody who, and I was in that position when I wrote our affirmative action program, that this person, he he's not here, he's here, and I know he's gonna get to this part. And, but this guy's just he's had one class. And I told him several months ago, do not make a zoning decision unless you talk with me and preferably Mike. And he had been doing that. He doesn't want,
You should be coming to the meeting.
actually, that was the other thing I said, how come you're not coming to the meeting?
I was going to ask you
It
about that.
wasn't part of my hiring. And we went through that with Gary Azuka, then towards the end with Frank, and it always was part of their compensation. And we're not getting paid for it. Oh, you are. It's part of the job.
Yes, it is.
So,
No, it's not. It wasn't hired,
It wasn't put in, it wasn't,
to my knowledge.
wasn't part of it.
Right, yeah, you're right, Tony, he wasn't, but it should have been.
It should have been, yeah.
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 So he was hired, and what was he hired for then? Was he hired as a construction official? He's got a license for that. I
He's been an
understand
inspector.
that. Okay, as an inspector as well, like, as a construction official, but if he's hired as a zoning officer, I don't understand. I don't understand how a zoning officer refuses to come to the meeting.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
If you don't make it part of his contract, he's not coming.
Yeah, it's
You're
yeah,
not required to be here, right?
I'll put you this way. The chief's here requiring me to be here. Now, how do I do my job without being here?
That's what.
I answer to this board, so I obviously, I'm gonna be at every meeting, yes.
This is a deeper issue
Yeah.
than what we can deal with. We've got more than what we deal with. And I think it's an issue that the mayor and council, if they're not aware of it, they should be aware of it. And they-
Well, that's what we did.
Yeah, I think that's.
you mentioned some things, and this is maybe more because I have not been here all that long, you know, things that haven't really been brought out, you know, here that have gone on. I mean, I do know that there are, you know, unfortunately, we're getting to the edge of where it could begin to get a little messy, quite frankly.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
And, but that doesn't mean you can't that doesn't mean you shouldn't think about getting your hands dirty. Because if you've got an issue of gross incompetence or gross negligence, that's it's a pretty serious matter, especially if, if the officer makes a determination that in the longer run, subjects the city to lots of liability, for example, granting an approval that should not be granted. First of all, because it wouldn't have the scrutiny of the board. Let's say something ended up being a, you know, public nuisance or a fire or some other type of situation. The fact that the board's power was usurped and someone not qualified made that determination. Okay.
Well, Bell Avenue, you know, that was,
Well, Bell Avenue was
according to
good.
the neighborhood.
Bell Avenue was a good example of that.
That's why they don't want this.
Oh, yeah.
That may well come back.
Of course it is. And next thing they're gonna come in for a use variance.
Well, they'll sue us when we have it.
Yeah, well, they will.
But that's the thing, what happens is you know, under the Tort Claims Act, one of the things, you know, you've got all the procedural issues, but once you get past those, the investigation is going to look back and say, okay, who granted the permit that allowed this to take place? Oh, well, the zoning board. Well, no, the zoning board didn't do anything. The zoning officer, you know, unilaterally made the decision. And well, then, you know, in essence, the municipality, the zoning official, as a member of the administration, is, you know, the administration, the city, municipality is ground zero. They're gonna get sued, and it's a matter of liability. It's a matter of, you know, how much insurance do you have? Because you're gonna need it. So you know, it's not that simple. It could be very complicated, and I speak on this periodically with the planning and zoning administrators. Frank, of course, was with them for many, many years. He was on the board with me, and we warned zoning officers, you know, don't make decisions on your own, and you know, however well meant, at the end of the day, it you know, you're putting your town at risk. If that's what this person is doing, and you know, we've seen a couple of than just some political issue, you know, a lot of money at stake.
Yeah, you're right.
Money is always critical.
So we sign a letter of lack of confidence.
No, it's not like a confidence.
Necessarily say lack
We
of
have to
confidence.
get him up to speed. And until he's up to speed, we need somebody who is qualified
Express
to do
concern.
that job.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's the question, what's the interim solution?
The interim solution is to make him the interim zoning
And how
officer.
do we do that? Mayor, council.
Your council have to do that. But I don't think some of the council members are aware of it. Unless we let them all know, and then puts that on the table for them.
There's another reason why that's a good idea, because, okay, I'm a plaintiff's attorney and I do due diligence about what happened. I find there's a letter, it's a letter, it's public record, that under which the chairman and membership of the zoning board of adjustment expressed concern about whatever. I'm not going to do, you know, suggest that changes be made. I mean, if that isn't a smoking gun, what is?
So we should go about it a little bit later.
Oh, yeah,
You could go about it as
Yeah,
like saying,
with-
just like you're saying, to protect ourselves, we thought it'd be great if we had a little bit of help. Not to say you're not doing this or that. The other thing, we're doing it to protect the whole.
Exactly.
You don't use a howitzer when a fly swatter is needed. My father was an army veteran, so he liked to say that to me, and it's true. You use a thoughtful approach.
Yeah.
Put them on notice, and
The cautionary measure
yep.
up the ladder, say, hey,
This
I think we should just take care of ourselves a little better here.
And it's a matter of record.
So that'll be read, if we do put a letter out there, that'll be read in an open
No.
council meeting?
No.
No.
No? Okay.
If anything, they'd have to do an executive session. Because it's
Right,
personnel.
right, okay.
Except that little red dot right now, I was looking at it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well. But we only get 12 people who watch, so
It's all plus the lawyer.
Well, you could, if you want, you could, you know, go to executive session, have that discussion. I mean,
Well, that's what I wanted to bring up to the board, and let you know what's going on.
I think perhaps if we individually, let's say we're all points of view, we know somebody ugly, we would be sitting here.
Right.
Maybe the people that want us should be told, hey, listen, you got trouble brewing here, because they might not know.
True, exactly.
You know, they just might not know. I mean, pick up
They
the
gotta
phone or walk in the store or wherever you see these people and say, hey,
Yeah, they have enough on their plates.
They got enough.
We've been there.
yeah, so I think before we get into a big thing,
right.
why don't we have this conversation at our next meeting after we've all contacted somebody, say, there's trouble in River City, we have to do something.
Sometimes the most important thing you can do is to get the word out, however gently, and let it take its course, rather than coming out and doing something very public where people are going to take defensive stands
I want to do that.
wherever they stand.
I just want to get the guy up to speed.
Well,
Until that time,
you have
we
the
need
best.
somebody who's competent.
Right, you have the best of intentions, and I agree with you. I think it's a good idea if you could corrective action such as, I know in Perth Amboy we did this once, we directed the zoning official to take courses. And, you know, the mayor at the time was,
Wilton?
that was Wilda, and, you know, she, rather than, you know, go through something more, just, you know, if you will, a formal proceeding, the official agreed, and that was the end. That was the end of the problem. From you know, not only did his performance get better, but there was no need to do anything that might embarrass anybody or anything like this. And just so you know, the official appreciated that approach as well. So that's what I'm thinking. If we get a bunch bunch of pushback, well, you know, let's revisit that in a couple of weeks.
So we're back here in 2 weeks, right?
Right.
Maybe.
We have a special meeting on the 3rd, right?
31st.
31st.
Yeah.
31st
Back-
of August.
We're back here on August 17th and August 31st.
Yeah.
Why don't we all
Busy,
say-
busy this
I
summer.
won't be here for the special meeting in August.
Why don't we all try to talk to someone?
Dan, you said you'd be here.
I'll be in Milwaukee.
I missed it.
You get to be chair, you're gonna be chair.
A special meeting.
What's on?
Yeah, what is on?
Pocari,
Oh, okay.
that's the one on, what did I say, Cliff
Yeah,
and
so I thought it might.
High and-
Yeah, here, okay.
I am Davenport, the old rectory, the old oral surgeon,
That's the one that Weiss wants.
Weiss wants to buy
Yes.
the parking lot,
Right up from
Davenport Street.
yeah, Davenport.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when Weiss wanted to use for.
Middle school parking
Yes,
lot,
that's
across from the middle school parking lot.
The church burned down years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay, right on the corner.
Yes,
Oh, and what is it? What's the application for?
he's going to make apartments on the second and I believe third floor, that's what that is.
Oh.
And
No, no, this is off.
No, that's.
This is Union
Oh, I'm
Avenue.
sorry, that's Union, I don't have the
You
card.
have it, I haven't done a report yet, it's to convert the building into 4 or 5 apartments.
So the orthodontist store.
Yes, correct,
Yeah.
Okay.
yes.
So I gotta handle
Give me
that.
that set of plans. I may already have that.
Anything else
Big
coming
green
forward?
set of,
I'm sure I have to come back and look, I have so
I know.
many boxes of plans, I'm sorry.
So I'd like to move for adjournment.
I'll move.
Move, second. All in favor? Okay.
Do we have
All right.
to just push the button?
There you go.
Yeah.
yeah, and that's